In this video, we are going to look at some questions on ionic equations. But before we can look at these questions, better we look at some of the basics on ionic equations. So the first question should be, what are ionic equations? Ionic equations are those equations that shows only the ions involved in a chemical reactions. So you will see that a qualified ionic equations should only have those ions that are involved in a chemical equations. Therefore, we are saying ions not taking part in the reaction, also known as spectator ions, are cancelled out in the construction of ionic equation. There are steps to consider when writing ionic equations. Mind you, I told you that I am just going through the basics when we are constructing ionic equations. So steps. The step number 1 is that you need to construct a balanced chemical equation. So when the equation is given to you, my dear learners, you need to check it and see to it that the equation is well balanced. If it is not balanced for you already, you are supposed to balance it on your own. The second step to consider is that you split only soluble ionic compounds. What do we mean by that? These are compounds existing in aqueous state. So you split those soluble ionic compounds into ions. After splitting, you need to make sure that the spectator ions are cancelled out of that constructed ionic equation. So after ionizing, you see that some of the ions will be spectators, meaning they are not taking part in the chemical reaction. So what are spectator ions? These are ions that appear on both the left and the right hand side of the equation. Remember, my dear learners, that every equation will have three components, and two of the components are very important. These are the reactants and the product side separated by arrow. Number 4 is that you need to write the equation without spectator ions. You write the equation without spectator ions. Now, you may be asking yourselves that, what are these ions? My dear learners, you need to remember that we have two types of ions. We have what we call cations and anions. Cations are positively charged ions. Anions are negatively charged ions. Therefore, we can look at some of the examples of these ions. So the first one is sodium ion, followed by chloride ion, and then we have potassium ions, silver ions, carbonate ions, lead 2 ions, hydroxide ions, nitrate ions, sulfate ions, ammonium ions, as well as copper ions. So you're supposed to know that these are the ions given. Now, you will find that these ions in chemical equations will be given to you in form of compounds. And some of them will be insoluble ionic compounds. Others will be soluble ionic compounds. I just sampled some of these ions. And it's very important that you know how to write the formula of ions. For example, I can give you some examples using my pen. I just hope it will work accordingly. Maybe I should use pink. I just hope it will be visible enough as for you to see. So for example, when we are talking about sodium ion, as you can see it there, the formula is going to be like this: sodium ion, chloride ion, potassium ion, silver ion, carbonate ion, like this. So I hope you know how to come up with these ions. Some of them will be in form of radicals, others will be free radicals, so you're supposed to understand that. So I've given you the basics. Now I think we are free to go and look at some of the ionic equation questions. So the first question is, write the ionic equation for the reaction below. Now, when we go back to our steps when constructing or coming up with the ionic equations, the first one was that we are supposed to come up with a constructed well-constructed chemical equation. So here is the equation where barium nitrate react with sodium sulfate to give us an insoluble salt barium sulfate plus a soluble salt sodium nitrate. I told you that you're supposed to check and see to it that the equation is well balanced. When I check my equation, this equation is already balanced. So the second step, we said you need to split ions. So we are going to split the ions. And this is the equation showing the split ions. And we said you only ionize the compounds that are existing in aqueous state. So when you check properly, my dear learners, you will find that barium nitrate is a soluble salt, so you can ionize. Sodium sulfate, you can ionize. Barium sulfate is a solid, you can't ionize. And then sodium nitrate is in aqueous state, then you can ionize. So when you check this equation, you will find that these are the only ions that are ionized. From this point, we said you need to cancel out the spectator ions. You cancel out the spectator ions. I said the spectator ions are the ions appeared on both the left and right hand side of the equation. So these ions are going to possess the same charge and they will have the same physical state. So when you look at barium here, you look at barium, you will find that barium is having the positive charge there, but barium in a sulfate, it has no charge, meaning this a sulfate, a barium here, and is not spectator. When you come to a nitrate, it is having a positive, a negative, sorry, and a negative there. So meaning this is the spectator. You're supposed to cancel it out. So we are going to cancel this. This is the spectator. And then sulfate and the sulfate, not spectator because they don't have the same charge. Sodium positive, sodium positive. So this is also a spectator. You can cancel out. So therefore, you find that now our final equation will be like this. It will show the ions that are involved in the chemical reaction. So the ions that are involved in the chemical reaction are barium ion as well as sulfate ions to give us the insoluble salt, which will be barium sulfate. So this is how we are supposed to do it. We can look at the second example. So we have this. Now we have copper 2 carbonate reacting with aqueous dilute hydrochloric acid to form copper 2 chloride plus water plus carbon dioxide. You can see that, you can see that water in this equation is existing as a covalent compound in liquid state. You can see it here. And then carbon dioxide is a gas. You can see it there. You cannot ionize covalent compounds because they have no ions. They don't ionize. So the only ionizable compound in these, the only two ionizable compounds are these that are in aqueous state. So you will find that when we ionize, we are going to come up with the equation like this one. You only ionize the acid and the copper 2 chloride salt. And after, you need to look at the spectator ions. So in this equation, the spectator ions, we have the chloride ions. These are spectator ions. You cancel them out. And you find that now, your final answer will be like this. This is the net ionic equation, or the net equation. The equation which will show no spectator ions. Okay, we can look at the last question. Maybe we look at this one. You can pause the video and try it yourself. We said when you construct the equation, or if the equation is given to you like this one, you need just to check it and see to it that it is well balanced. When I check it, I find that the equation is balanced. If you have challenges on balancing chemical equations, feel free to watch my video on how to balance chemical equations. So from here, you need to ionize. You expose the ions that are ionizable, and then you cancel the spectator ions. So on the spectator ions, we are doing it together. So you will see that we have the hydrogen ions and the hydroxide ions that are not spectator. So you find that the spectator ions will be the sodium as well as the chloride. You cancel, you remain with the spectator ions, and the equation, or should I say, you remain with the ions that are not spectators, and the equation should be like this. So this is how you will be rewarded. Even the marks that are going to be given to you, they will be in accordance to the way you present the work. Don't forget the steps involved. Don't forget charges when you ionize equations. Don't forget to balance chemical equations. If at all you forget, you lose marks, or sometimes you gain no mark. Thank you so much for today, and this is where we are going to end our video. Thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe and follow me so that you can watch some videos I'll be able to post in the due course.